Hey y'all, I'm James Wright. Welcome to my shop, and this is the Liberty Bell Plane metal body. We're going to have some fun restoring it and making it look, well, just this pretty and shiny. And stay tuned to the end. We'll actually talk about the history behind the Liberty Bell, because this was made when the United States was only 100 years old as opposed to 250. So let's dive in and have some fun restoring a plane. So this plane here was produced when the US was 100 years old, and it is a beautiful old plane with an interesting device for adjustment. But yeah, it's seen better days, and the top and bottom of this are broken apart. The knob has been tied together with it, and it's got a crack that goes almost all the way through. It's covered in rust, and most of this, it's seized up pretty good. Not to mention, it's not in great shape. So we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to clean this up, and we're going to celebrate the 250th by making this a little bit nicer. Let's dive in. Let's take this apart, and that's not horrible. So let's tear into this thing and see what we actually have. Most of it came apart pretty well, but a lot of it was seized up. I was actually surprised. Most of the time those stud screws lock in. And this one took a good bit to get going, but then it also came out, and most of the pieces really just came apart. You can see the wear on that iron. We're going to have to replace it. It went all the way through, so it actually broke. This whole mechanism, though, is one you really can't take apart. It is all riveted in place. In order to take it out, it would basically mean destroying the plane. So we're going to leave that all in place and work through it. Thankfully, this also came apart, but you can see that so did the handle itself. So we're going to have to send that off. And thankfully, Gordon Addison has offered to redo this. And if you haven't seen his work before, it's amazing. You got to go take a look at it. He's actually doing a video where he will show the restoration of this and what all goes into it. I'm going to put this in a rust removing solution. This is a slightly different stuff put together by Beyond Ballistics, and it has become my go-to solution. I did a video on it, and it is amazing how well it works. Really, really, really good stuff, and dirt cheap. And it takes the rust off of all of it. We're still going to do a little bit of cleanup, but to get the rust off and get it stopping, it works phenomenally well. So we're going to start taking these all apart, and this piece was just really, really jammed in there. And yes, I should get a different pair of pliers on here, but the vice grip are what I had, and it works okay. But in this case, it was not moving at all. So I'm going to hit with some penetrant and come back and play at it, and then come in with an appropriate tool. Now, the appropriate tool really should have been the hand tool rescue wrench, but I thought about that too late, and this one actually works pretty well. And since it came out, great. The problem is the nut came off, but that stud that goes all the way through was still stuck in the slot in the chip breaker, and so tapping that loose was a little more difficult than it should have been, but it all comes out. So we can take all of this, let it soak in the rust remover for a little while, and see how that goes. I'm actually going to end up sandblasting the body and the lever cap, as those I need to get the old Japanning off of them to recoat them. But to get the rust off and get them going, this works phenomenally well. After it comes out of this, then we can take it over to the wire wheel and remove any other little bits of whatnot might be on there. The problem with the wire wheel is I can't get all of the Japanning off, and so I am going to have to send that off to a sandblaster. I didn't get any videos of the sandblaster because my cabinet doesn't work anymore, and so I ended up giving it away. And so I've got a good friend who does sandblasting, and he took it and did all that work for me, but I didn't get any videos of it. So you can see me using the wire wheel, but not the sandblaster. Maybe some of these days I'll get a new cabinet, but we'll work with what we've got. Most of these pieces are too little, and actually using a pair of pliers allows you to get into the wire wheel and clean them out. And especially this little T-nut on here, this is what sticks into the chip breaker. Holding onto that was a bit of a pain. The chip breaker didn't need a ton of work, but it had a lot of pitting in it. And I was originally planning on getting rid of the chip breaker and getting a new one, but it actually worked out pretty well. This one cleans up nicely, and finding a replacement chip breaker is difficult to do. For the Japanning on this, I'm using a Plain Life. I really like his stuff. It's a great mixture, and it's a really standard Japanning, exactly what would have been on this originally. So it is as close as you can get to the original, and the look on it is almost identical. So it goes on pretty well. You put it on nice and thin, and you build up a couple coats. So depending upon how thick you want it, you do multiple coats. Originally, Stanley put a lot on there. So if you want it to look like original, you're going to end up doing 3, 4, or 5 coats to get that nice, thick, smooth, and you get a shiny surface on there. I like it to be a little bit thinner, especially on this one because I wanted to read the Liberty Bell on there and see the 76. So to do that, it needs to be a bit thinner. And so what I'll do is end up putting it on fairly thick, and then I'll come and wipe off a little bit with a brush, just making sure it's a little thinner. Do a full coat on it, come back and do it again, do another full coat on it, come back and do it again. On this one, I ended up doing 3 coats. I could have done 4, but I would have lost a little bit more of the detail than I would normally like to. So we're going to apply it on and then bake it. And for the baking, I actually have a small oven that I use in the shop. For larger items, I'll actually take it up to the kitchen oven. The nice thing about it is that the smell on this dissipates really, really quickly. So it's one of those things that my wife doesn't even notice once I've done it if she's been gone. So it actually works out really well. And I don't fear doing it in the kitchen oven. But for small pieces like this, the little toaster oven in the shop works very well. So we can pull that out, and we're going to do a test fit on everything because I just got back the supplies from Gordon Addison and I want to see how that goes. But I do need to clean off all of the sides on this, and so we need to grind it down. I want to see how much I actually need to do before we get there. Now, I've only done a couple coats on this, so I want to do that before I actually do the final coats of Japanning. And in this case, it needed a lot of work, and I realized I'm not going to get this back to original shiny because the amount of grinding it would take, I would actually have to grind almost all the way through the thin wall of steel on this. So I'm going to do about half of the sanding here, and then I'll come back and do the other half later. You can see I'm kind of rounding over in that corner because it's folded. The corners aren't sharp. It's actually a very nice rounded radius on there, which feels a little bit better. And I just have a piece of 1/4-inch glass that works really well to smooth it all out on. A little bit of oil on there just to keep anything from rusting. Work it into all of the surfaces, and it works out pretty well. I like how that came out. At this point, I'm just testing to make sure everything works and that everything is the way it needs to be in case I need to do a little bit more. I still have one more coat of Japanning to put on the outside, and I need to do all of the finish sanding to smooth it out and get it at least as close as it'll get. But I want to make sure that all of the pieces are functioning, and I don't really have to do a lot more. One of the problems with this one is finding an original chip breaker and iron are very difficult, so I ended up replacing the iron with a hawk iron, but that's a slightly different dimension. It's starting to look good, but Gordon Addison, he does amazing totes and knobs, and so he has taken these and restored them. If you can remember what they looked like a few minutes ago, they don't look like that anymore. And I haven't had a chance to see these yet. And packing! Most important, a sticker. He even included the string that came with it. But look at that. Yes, that is the exact same knob. The tote was also chipped and missing. So he did. Oh man, that's beautiful. And holy cow, I was flabbergasted by his work. And I mean, I've seen his work many times, and he does really, really good. And I was expecting really, really good, but this just came out gorgeous. He has the ability to make them look like new, or to make them distressed and make cracks disappear. And they completely. The splitting on this knob, I do not know how he did that. I'm really looking forward to seeing his video. And if you want to see his video on how he restored them, he put that down below. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. But I love how this came out. Just the good furniture on a plane really makes it come out well. And the finish he puts on there is beautiful and functional. And it'll be ready for another 150 years of regular use. And there's the rough idea. Now I just need to do all of the finish sanding on this. It's going to take me forever and a day. Do another coat of Japanning. Last little details, and I think this is going to be off to the races. So after all the Japanning and then coming back and doing as much sanding as I dare on this, we need to actually do the final finishing and oiling. And I really like using the antique improver. If I'm just doing a cleanup on a tool, this is usually the oil I'm going to reach for. It soaks into the iron nicely, and it's just an all-around good feel, and it smells fantastic with an orange solvent on there. I really enjoy it. But the one interesting thing about this is the chip breaker is actually adjustable. Most chip breakers come specifically sized to an exact plane. And this, the nut can loosen up, and then you can slide that stud up and down in the slot and make the chip breaker work on others. The other problem I ran into in this one, you'll see the hole in the iron is down at the bottom, like the modern ones. This one actually had the hole at the top, which makes it easier for adjusting that nut. So it's going to be one of the odd things that are annoying about having that iron in there, as opposed to having the original iron, which had the hole at the top, which would make it a little easier to come and go. But such is life. So now that we got this together, let's actually take it for a test drive. And one of the things you want to do is let it back off and then slowly move it forward until the iron engages. In this case, we can tap it down a little bit until the iron finally engages. And once the iron actually starts cutting, then it should be at depth, or a very, very light depth. But in this case, it went, in that little bit of tapping, went from light to really heavy, and I was taking this shaving that was just way too thick. So let's back it off and try it again. And that's one of the problems with the Liberty Bell series, is that they were a pain to adjust, and most people ended up just adjusting with a hammer. And that's what I ended up doing with this one, is I got it close, backing it off, and then tapped it forward with the hammer. And the lever just makes it fast to pull the iron back up, as opposed to trying to tap the other end. And so it's kind of one of those things you play with. But in this case, I realized I was going against the grain, and so if you flip it around, oh, that's much better. I'm actually getting nice shaving now. And I'm happy with this. It is a functioning plane. And yes, with some more work, it will work perfectly fine. It just takes a lot more work because it's, well, a little less functional. And look at that. Ain't that pretty? Really like how that came out. Still a good bit of pitting on there, but I'm not going to be able to get that off without doing a ton of work. And this is a fairly thin steel on here, because this is the cheaper brand that Stanley made for a while. And if I did much more, you're actually going to wear right through that surface. And the nice thing is, we no longer need the string to hold together the front knob, because Gordon Anderson actually did an amazing job cleaning those up. And he is the guy to go to when you want expert restoration on rosewood knob and totes. Beautiful, beautiful work. And so I'm really liking how this came out. Also, I was not able to find an original iron, which is slightly wider than a standard number 4. It's about an 1/8 inch wider. So this iron is a little bit thinner, but I was able to put a good hawk in there and make it a decent functioning plane. When the US turned 100 years old in 1776, Stanley said, hey, we should do a commemorative plane. And they decided to make the Liberty Bell series that put the Liberty Bell on the cap. And they came out in 1777, a little after the 100-year, but they continued to produce them for a couple decades because they were affordable to produce. And at the time, this cost $1 more than the standard Bailey pattern plane. And so it was the cheap plane. But it's also a cheap plane, not a great user. It may be surprising to find out, but yes, back in the day, they also made relatively junky tools. And not a whole lot of these still exist because the people who knew what they were doing and made it out of a living generally didn't buy the Liberty Bell. And then the ones that were purchased were often recycled, especially with World War I and World War II, because they're not great users. They don't accomplish the task that they were intended to make. But that also means that they're a little more collectible. This particular one is interesting because it's the metal body version, and Stanley didn't make as many of these. Most of them were made actually as a transitional with a wooden body and a metal piece that goes in there. Those you'll find quite a bit of, as the adjustments on that weren't a huge step from the Bailey pattern transitional planes. Those are slightly more usable, and the wooden sole is a fairly standard thing, whereas in this, the sole of this and the sides of the cheek are actually folded steel. So it's wrapped up around the side, giving you a sole that's really thin and flimsy and tends to cause some problem. Also, all the hardware and everything inside is riveted onto the sole, And then the frog underneath, well, it's not movable. It's just a piece of steel and usually came with japanning on top of it, which is why I left the japanning on top of this one, because that's the way it was made. It's designed to be cheap and affordable as opposed to a high quality long-term tool. Also, the adjuster on this is a pain. The depth adjuster is so finicky, just slight movements cause it to be a problem. You're gonna have to do lateral adjusting, and so in most cases it's actually better to hammer adjust the iron than to use the actual adjuster. But because the mechanisms are different, they didn't run into the problems with the Bailey pattern patent. So they could make these and make them completely separate from Bailey, which, if you know anything about the history, there were a lot of arguments between Bailey and Stanley, and brought us to this. Now, this video was actually suggested by a viewer of the channel, and I want to say thank you for that. He actually sent in this to be restored, and I'm going to send it back to him to say a thank you. This was a fun one, and I'm glad we could do this for the 250th anniversary. And yes, that means this plane is around 150 years old and still taking shavings. So I guess it's got that going for it. Having a little bit of fun with that, and I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, thoughts, ideas, snide remarks, throw those in the comments down below. Also, I do want to say a huge thank you to all the patrons on Patreon, especially the ones scrolling over here on the side. They are the wonderful, benevolent, gorgeous, beautiful people over on Patreon who keep this channel going. They're the ones who pay to make some things like this. As well as Gordon Addison, I want to say a huge thank you for that. He did all of the work on that for free for me, and he's a great friend, and I want to say thank you for that. If you want to see any links to all that down below, you know what to do. I think that'll do it for now. And until next time, have a wonderful day. The Liberty Bell planes. There's something about their history that's very familiar. I mean, it kind of rings a bell.